Welcome back. We've learned a few Docker commands and how to create a Docker file. But there's a few things that we want to do. For example, we have our version of Node, but ideally, we're able to run our SmartBrain API in this container. How can we do that? Well, in this video, let's tackle that. Let me introduce you to a few more Docker commands that we can use. First one is the work directory or workdir instruction. And this says that this is the directory in the container that we want to work out of. And I'm just going to create one that says app, or let's just call it SmartBrain API. And that's the working directory. So next time we actually go into the bash of the container, we'll find ourselves in here. The next one we want to use is something like copy. And copy, as the name suggests, copies whatever we want from our current directory into the container. In our case, this is our root directory, so we can just say that we want to copy everything in this root directory, and where do we want to put it into our container. In our case, we want to put it in our working directory, so we can just keep it the way it is. And by the way, over here, I can do something like if I only want to copy package.json file, I could do that as well because that's at the root directory. But for now, we want to copy everything. There you go. And then the last command I'm going to teach you is run. And run is simply saying, what should we do here? And what type of commands should we run in the container? And we want to run npm install because we've created a working directory, we've copied all these files, and we then want to run npm install. Kind of like what we do when we do git clone onto our desktop, our project, and then run npm install. That's the exact same thing. And you can run multiple commands here. Now, you might be thinking, what's the difference between run and command? Now, run is what we call an image build step. The state of the container after a run command will be committed to the Docker image. So a Docker file can run many run steps that layer on top of one another to build the image that we want. Now, the command, on the other hand, is something that executes by default when you launch the build image. So a Docker file can have only one command, and that usually comes at the end of the file. So let's just check out and see what happens if I run these commands now. If I go into my terminal, and once again, let's make this a little bit bigger. And once again, I run docker build our super awesome. All right, you see that there's more steps now. It's running npm install. We have a bit of a warning, but I think that should be fine. And then finally, we're running the command, 5 steps, and it looks like it's successfully built everything. Now, let's actually go into this container and see what happened. I'm going to clear this and say docker run, again, the IT, and then super awesome container. All right, look at this. Our working directory is user source SmartBrain API, which we just defined. And if I do ls here, how cool is that? We have all our files from our computer in this container. And we also ran npm install. So theoretically, if I run npm start here, how cool is that? We have our server running on a container right now in a Docker container. An app is running on port 3000. Okay, so let's go check it out. I open up a new tab and let's just do localhost 3000. The site can't be reached. And that's because localhost is referring to our computer. But if you remember about our discussion of containers, our container is a completely separate thing running on its own, and our computer doesn't really have knowledge of that container. And that's the thing. And this is something that gets a lot of people caught up. When we have a container, let me exit out of this. When we have a container, the container doesn't really know of the machine. We need to actually tell it where to expose a port. You see, the outside world, which is my computer, cannot connect to the container by default. We have to actually tell the container what to expose. And we call this port binding, and we'll use a technique called port forwarding to do this. And it sounds more complicated than it is. All we need to do is within our command, give it the -p parameter, which stands for port, and give it we want the port 3000 on our container, and we're going to forward that to port 3000 on the host, on the machine. So if I run this, okay, we've gone into the container. I run npm start. Our app is running on port 3000. And now if we go back, all right, reference error, database is not defined. And that is because if we go to our server.js, we have over here in the GET request, database.user, which actually is not correct. We have DB now. We're never using database, but it's actually working. So let's change this to it's working. I'm going to save. And let's refresh. And the tricky part is we're going to have to run this again. Let me close this and run npm start. Let's go back and refresh. And you see how it's actually not working right now? And that is because and we actually have to, let's close this. We're going to exit this and rebuild our image. Again, it's copying the files, running through the steps, then finally run our container. And if we run npm start now, go back and refresh, it's working. How nice does that feel? We've just officially created a Docker container for our API server. So now all we need to do is give this folder with the Docker file anywhere. And as long as they have Docker, we can just simply run this on any machine that we want. Very cool. But there's a problem now. How about this database? What do we do with that? What do we do with Postgres? For that, you have to wait for the next video. I'll see you in that one.